Hey friend, welcome to the Halfway to Dead podcast. I'm your host, Jen Lovell. Listen, you and I have reached that age where we are done with the bullshit. We know that midlife is our chance to flip the script and experience life on our own terms. It's time to reconnect with our higher selves and reclaim our inner peace. Are you ready with an open heart and an open mind? Awesome, you're in the right place. Hop in and ride shotgun with me on this midlife spiritual journey. Hey guys, thanks for coming back and being my ride or die in this midlife spiritual journey. So today, guess who's back? Shelley Takei, aka Shelley. As a reminder, she holds a doctorate in transpersonal psychology and women's studies from the Union Institute. She's been a professor at numerous universities where she's taught courses in both traditional and transpersonal psychology. She's worked with thousands of women as the director of a single parent and homemaker program, as well as in her private psychological practice. She's the owner and trainer of MARI, which is the Mandala Assessment Research Instrument. And if you don't know what I'm saying, you have to go back and listen to the episode right before this one. We talk all about that amazing test. So let's jump in because today we're talking about her book, SheQ, Why Women Should Mentor Men and Change the World. And I don't need to pre-tell you a lot about this interview. So many cool things we talked about. So let's jump in and hear all about this amazing book. Hey, Shelley, thanks for coming back. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
We have a lot to dive into today, guys, because we're diving into her book. I want to first tell everybody how this book landed in my hands and how I even knew it existed. Because, as you guys heard last week, I came to Shelley for the MARI test. So while I was there, I'm seeing her little card about this book. And I was like, what do you mean book? I knew nothing. And so I started asking her about the book and she's telling me all about it. And I was like, where can I buy it? Where can I get this thing? I have to get this thing. And she's like, well, I have some. You went back in your house, you came back out with a copy of the book, and she inscribed it for me, you guys. So I have a signed copy here, and it says, Jen, you are wonderful. I love what you're doing. Keep up the good work, Shelley. Guys, that's right on the first page of my book. So you know how we always talk about how things come to us that are meant to come to us?
Yes, I love that.
I was not expecting to learn about any book or anything about any of this. I thought I was just getting this little MARI test, and this came out of it also. So this is I really want to share this with you guys. So just to start off, the title is SheQ. So tell us exactly what SheQ is.
I would love to. Okay. I'm also a school psychologist. I'm trained in giving IQ tests. So I was always aware there was IQ. And then most of your listeners are going to know after a while, they're like, well, gee, you can have a really high IQ and still not be very smart about stuff. So they added in EQ, emotional intelligence. You have to have, a brain that it doesn't get off track and get all haywire. You have to be able to use that intelligence in a good way. So there's EQ. SheQ, in its simplest form, would be the wisdom of women, which is higher than even EQ. SheQ.
Yeah.
Because men and women are not the same.
They are not. We're going to get into that. Okay. So the actual title, you guys, is SheQ, Why Women Should Mentor Men and Change the World. And like she said, basically, this book we've talked about, Shelley and I have talked about this. It was released in 2012, and she was a bit ahead of the curve, guys. We were.
I always am.
Why do you think we weren't quite ready for it in 2012?
I know. You know why? Because I was following feminism. I have a PhD in women's studies, too, and also transpersonal. The only reason I got a PhD is I've never considered myself a feminist, but the only reason I got my PhD in women's studies was because I did work with more than 1,000 women as the director of a single parent and homemaker program. And fortunately, we were off-site, so we had I couldn't take the money. It was a state and federally funded program. Single parent and homemaker program. Pennsylvania had it. It was fabulous. For 12 years, I worked with these women. And these women were, they were on welfare. Some of them hadn't graduated from high school. Anyway, so it was like, do everything they need related to good self-esteem and problem solving and decision making, but also, dressing properly, going through an interview, creating a resume. And those women, 97% of them went on to further schooling. It was wildly successful. Because we lived in a college town, a lot of them went to start at college, and even though they hadn't been good students in high school, they were adults. This was the first returning adults, and they were adults, and they were 4.0 students. They
were the best students, I guarantee it. Because I went back to school as an adult, and it's just different, right? Because you're not there to party and see what cute boys or girls are there and all. You're there to get an education, right? Like I was up I put my children to bed, and then I was up studying and finishing my homework at night. I wasn't messing around. Okay.
Right.
And so if I was going to do it, and this is my personality, but a lot of women who go back to better themselves, it's like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this right. I'm not going to waste my time on anything that's not going to benefit me. So yeah. So you can go back if you're listening at any age. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I never understood. So, and meanwhile, I'm following feminism, like what? And Gloria Steinem started saying in the late 90s, there's no difference between men and women. I'm like, oh my God, my whole philosophy. And even when I was getting my doctorate in women's studies, I was the only person in a class of like 20 that had what I would call an essentialist point of view. Essentialist means that males and females have their own unique, essential qualities. So that's basically what the book is about, is trying to undo what has been said in the last 100 years, or since science, since we started thinking more coherently, and these fields have gotten,
So we're going to dig into that just to stay on this feminism point.
Sure, go ahead.
Because there's a lot of people, all right, who hear the title to the book and they're clutching their pearls and they're uncomfortable. That title makes them uncomfortable. I mean, I love it. But if you're listening, you're like, oh boy, is this just going to be a big men bashing book? Is this just going to be a big feminist? Because the feminist movement, like you said, is a lot about women can do anything men can do. We can do, we're the same. We're the same. There is no difference. There is no difference. And this is what you say you were fighting against. Like you were saying, no, that's
honestly, I'm sorry, but at the time, my teacher always wanted me to speak up. She knew that I did not agree with the feminist jargon.
Yes.
And she wanted me to speak up, and I didn't. I didn't want to fight with 20 other women. To me, the idea that men and women are different, I couldn't believe that I would have to argue that point. But the feminist position was there's no difference between men and women, which ultimately immediately left out any research or anything done on, well, then what if there's a difference? How are women different, and what are their strengths?
Yes. And before we fully jump into this book, let's also talk about, because this is a heavily researched book. I want to be clear that Shelley is very educated. Just alone, if you just look at her at the end of the book, there's her notes biography index. It's like almost 20 pages long, you guys.
That was a researched book. Yeah.
Yes. There is research behind all of this. I believe at one point you told me that your intention initially for the book would be used in an educational setting, right?
It was published by an academic press.
Okay, thinking that possibly that
was
a route to go.
Ideally, they thought they'd sell it to females who were taking women's studies classes.
Yes, because this book is a really good combination of the science and research behind it, and also your experiences. So just to be clear, everybody, this is backed by a lot of research, right? I mean, that was probably a big part of when you were writing this book. It was about research, making sure you had your facts straight.
Because I didn't want it to be like, this is according to Shelley Takei. That's not it.
No.
Just because I think there's essential differences. I was arguing for the fact that women have their own unique qualities.
Yes. This is not a book about bashing the masculine and bashing men. To be clear, everybody, don't get nervous. That's not what this is going to be all about. And do you have anything else you want to add to that about just to let people know your thought process that this was not anything that you were doing to make men feel inferior, right? That's not the point of the book. No. Do you have any more wisdom on that?
Sure.
I know you do.
The next thing I would say in regard to this discussion would be, look at a list of yin and yang qualities that have existed primordially through nature, are essential for life. There's yang qualities, which are masculine, and yin qualities that are feminine. 100% of the time, even today, we will value the masculine quality over the feminine quality. So the whole point of SheQ is to just put out there, what are the feminine qualities? Why have they been so denigrated? And how can we, as women, if we embrace our own feminine qualities without going into a little box of like, oh my God, you can't do that because that's too feminine or that's too, masculine, that kind of thing. It's not like it's an equality of value. How can women value themselves if they don't even value their feminine qualities?
Amen. So I want to read this for everybody, all my friends listening, because I think a lot of you will connect with this when you hear it. A lot of my midlife women. So she's I'm right in the beginning of the book here, page 4. And she says, you may be a woman who has outgrown much of what you learned growing up. You may have heard the call that there could be more to life than what you were living and followed that path into a new and exciting, but sometimes lonely world. You may be a woman who still embraces the beliefs of your childhood and feels comfortable with your values. Or, like most women, you may be somewhere in the middle. You have some new thoughts, some old thoughts, and some guilt mixed for good measure. Regardless of where you are, if you're a female, you have probably encountered the concept that you are somehow less than a man. When that happens, how do you react? Do you let it just roll off you because a part of you agrees? Do you get angry and try and fight back? Do you sense that it isn't true, but really can't say why? Okay, so I loved that, right? Kicking it off in the book, because I feel like we feel a connection when we hear that. Because a lot of us in this midlife spiritual awakening that we talk about a lot on my show, we're feeling this. And I love that you're, throughout this book, directing us to embrace our feminine again, and how that helps us, will help the men, will help us all evolve as a collective. From this patriarchy we've been in for, what, a couple thousand years, would you say?
And patriarchy skews research. Because, there is a thing you can look on YouTube. I saw it a couple years ago, and it's called What is Woman? And this guy spent an hour and a half interviewing all these women, gynecologists, professors of women's studies, women off the street, what is woman? And nobody could answer that question. It's worth watching on YouTube.
Okay.
Women would stand up and say, this interview is over, especially pissed off feminists.
Yes.
So it went from being very patriarchal, still is, valuing, if you look deep enough, valuing masculine, and then it went into there's no difference, and now we're into the continuum for young people, which I have 5 granddaughters. 2 of them at least are on that continuum. I'm not, I could be male, I could be female. So it's in a continuum. Again, though, zero focus on what are the feminine qualities. It's just anything's possible.
So I bet, I don't know how old your grandkids are, but I bet that you have interesting conversations with them. Do you?
They're very much on. They agree with me. Yeah, we do. And the whole family has been totally accepting, because the oldest one's 22 and the youngest one's 16. So, that's the right age group. And we completely get it. The older people like me, we just get confused about the pronouns, but it's okay.
Well, it's
pronouns.
Confusing. But that doesn't mean, if you're confused about what pronouns you use, that you don't agree with the core beliefs.
No, thank God, our family's all on the same page. Yeah.
On the same page with all of that. Okay, good. Well, we're on this whole feminism, like the history of feminism. So you almost feel like this book is a follow-up from Elizabeth Stanton, correct?
Katie Stanton.
Elizabeth Cady Stanton. So
yes.
We're talking, we got a lot of woo-woo spiritual people listening, so don't worry about getting too woo-woo.
Okay.
Because you have had some past life regression type things where you feel a connection to her, don't you?
Yes.
Yes. So tell us a little about who she was, because a lot of people have probably never maybe even heard of her.
Elizabeth Cady Stanton is considered now, she got written out of history, but now that she's back, they consider her the architect of the first women's movement, suffragettes. And she wrote most everything that Susan B. Anthony said.
Yes.
She was the brains behind it.
And so you kind of have felt a strong connection to her that even in Lilydale, they have these live ghost walks and people are on their porch and they're,
I'm dressed up like her.
Yes.
And I come out and speak to a group of 30. If there's more than that, they have 2 groups of 30 sometimes. And I'm dressed like her. I have a shawl on and things, and I introduce myself as Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and I tell my story. And the story is that she was the president of both women's organizations when suffragism started. And so very well known. The brains behind it. She wrote almost everything that went in the pamphlets that went out to those women. There were thousands of women in each of the 2 groups, and she was president of both. So everybody was waiting for her words, or Susan delivered her words. They traveled together. What they wanted at the time, they didn't want equality. They wanted to be able to vote. I mean, they didn't get into the deeper stuff that I do with CQ, but so they wanted equality. But Elizabeth, who was smart and ahead of the game, she wrote a book, and it was called The Woman's Bible, because what she realized was so much of the patriarchal, masculine-based things we believe are masculine, and they're coming straight from the Bible. So Elizabeth Cady Stanton wrote a book that was called The Woman's Bible, and within 2 days of that book coming out, first of all, everybody was shocked and appalled. Everybody said it was too soon. It was the work of the devil. She did say in there that the Bible was not written by God. It was written by men. And she was written out of history for 50 to 80 years.
Oh, they canceled her real quick. The men got a hold of that book and went, we have to erase her from history. This is done, right?
She's back now. She is back and credited to be.
Everything's coming back now. Everything that got buried. I mean, I love to study Mary Magdalene and all kinds of women who got erased, basically, from history.
Right.
So that's a fun kind of woo-woo thing, you guys, because she really felt connected to her, and you feel like you've done the follow-up book. When you were writing, you felt that connection, though.
She was still written out of history. I'll just be brief. I discovered her when I was getting my doctorate in 1992 and 93. And I was like, oh my God, I love her. But there was no real, very good information on her. And I didn't know she got written out of history. She was the only feminist writer, and I had to read tons of books. They were all mostly just pissed off. And really, even philosophically, from the position of there's no difference between men and women, the feminists did not have good scholarship. If there's no difference, then what are you going to say? We're just not like men, which is what most of the books said.
Right. Yeah.
So
they were very focused on getting the right to vote, which they got in 1920.
Yeah. Yep.
That was their goal, right? Because that was a big accomplishment, guys. And even to hear that took till 1920 to happen seems just crazy to me. But anyway, I digress. So,
well, we still didn't pass the ERA yet.
There's just still a lot of things left. There's a lot of work left to be done, for sure. Okay. Let's start getting into this. You have a chapter in your book that's about how do we get here? How did we get to this patriarchy? And I have a few little pages I marked here that stood out to me as examples. Should I read a couple? Do you want me to read a couple?
Sure.
All right, let's do it. First of all, we heard about the witches, okay? You've got a section here that talks a little bit about when women started getting burned at the stake. Am I right?
It started before that, yeah.
Well, it started before, but this is one example. This started obviously way before that. Because women were the midwives, the healers, the nurturers. They were we were in charge of that. The men decided they wanted to be in charge of that, of course, right? And so what do? We need all these women who are healers and midwives, and we need them to be discredited, right? We need them to now be witches. We're going to drown them, burn them, whatever needs to be done so that we can take over the medical field, which to this day has affected us because we've just been included in medical trials.
That's right.
In the last 50 years or so, maybe not even. Okay. So all the medical decisions were made by us. I mean, we were the caregivers. It switched, and we're still feeling the ripple effect, the repercussions of that today. Right? Because I also read you had in here, there was a Victorian doctor who basically,
I remember.
He basically decided that the angle at which your womb or your uterus, girls, was tilted determined whether you were sane or insane. In other words, this man decided to do an exam and see if your uterus was tilted or not, and you might get institutionalized based on his findings, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
These are facts we're talking about. These aren't opinions. This is how it went down, you guys. We are not just willy-nilly men are bad. No, there's some history behind this, you guys. Let's talk a little bit about also a big part of ushering the patriarchy was religion. To be clear, when we ushered in religion, that affected everything.
It was completely male-based.
Yes.
Christianity is a male-based patriarchal system.
Yes, because technically Jesus, he really wasn't here to start a religion at all, is my understanding. And there were Gnostic texts. Things were being written down by all kinds of people, all right, including Mary Magdalene, who was his right-hand girl. And there's speculation on how serious that relationship was. But at the very least, she was his most trusted advisor. And her teachings, when we got the Bible that y'all are probably reading today, the King James, basically the Roman Catholics got together, right, in Nicaea, and they decided what was going to make the cut and what was not going to make the cut. They were editing. They were humans editing scripture, basically.
Absolutely.
And so
in 300 AD.
Yes. So anything that had to do with empowering women or the feminine got deleted. I mean, they were ordered to burn those things. Like Mary Magdalene's teachings were found only because there were monks and people that hid them in caves, right, to try and preserve them. Otherwise, everything was being changed. Okay, Mary Magdalene went from his most trusted advisor to basically a whore that needed
virgin whore split. Yeah.
That needed saving, right? So religiously, things took a big turn.
You know, for example, it's only been recently that you start seeing things on the internet or reading things out there. Like people used to think if you weren't religious, you wouldn't be moral. Right. Religion was very, very important to determining how you feel about yourself and others, that kind of thing. And we used to believe that you were, if you didn't go to church, you weren't moral. That's absolutely ridiculous.
Right. Yeah. No. And that was all just indoctrination we all had. The more feminine version of Christianity mentioned earlier and viewed the story of Adam and Eve very differently. No sin, no guilt, no devil, no disobedience. Eating the apple represented instead consciousness and the freedom that accompanies living consciously. According to this interpretation, Eve's job is to awaken life in Adam. It's not surprising that the patriarchal culture would change that interpretation. Even the whole Adam and Eve story completely got changed on us. Okay, so this goes all the way back to when we started thinking about chastity, right? That a woman is only supposed to have sex with one man. Well, here's why. Way back in the day, I think women realized, you talked about this, before men.
Yes, I did.
How a child even becomes. Like, go way back, you guys, okay, in your mind. And think of when women were giving birth and we're wondering, how did this happen? Right? And so, because at that point, men, because of their testosterone and everything else, they were having sex with whoever, whenever. If there was a woman around, she was theirs. All right. This is what was happening. Then, because with the patriarchy being ushered in, land, wealth, right, that started to travel down through men, not women. And they realized, okay, I've got to have a son to pass things down through. Well, if I'm having sex with everybody and everybody, all the other men are having sex with all the women, we don't know whose kid's whose kid. I mean, essentially, I never really thought about this until I was in your book. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's true. If you go way back to when this first started, well, that's when men decided, all right, then I need to grab one woman. She needs to only have sex with me because I need to know that this is my child. This is my son, right? For lineage. Yes. So then
for the stuff, to get my stuff. Yeah.
Yes, because like you said, the only way patriarchy could be ensured, men discovered, was if the female's chastity was guaranteed. If she were free to sleep with someone else, then he could never be sure the male child, his rightful heir, was really his. Marriage became the way to ensure that she would only be with him. Furthermore, an almost secondary consequence, he was also supposed to be only with her. The man and the woman, through the marriage ritual, were to form a partnership, emotionally, spiritually, and sexually, that would become the basis of a family into which children would enter. So this feels like a big part of patriarchy, because all of a sudden men became very in charge of all of that, of our bodies, essentially, because we became their property, and so did all the children we bore became their property. I mean, yeah, we're luckily coming out of that. But when you think of the history of all this and you start to really think of where this came from, right? Historically.
You can go back a little bit farther too, prehistory, because things weren't written down. So we're guessing or intuiting a lot of it because it was prehistory. There was no concept of time. Women figured out the sex act because it was they realized like once a month we have periods and the sky changes. Women figured out the concept of time by being able to embody it in their bodies. So that, and partly why it took so long, probably hundreds of years, is because there's 9 months, you have sex, and then 9 months later you have a baby. So I write this little, hypothetical fake thing that, where the women know, and women are credited with understanding or creating the concept of time.
Yes, because they intuitively, and they knew that the moon was changing in the sky. They knew they also had their own cycle in their body that went along pretty much the same cycle, right? The same month. Yes.
So I create this little scenario where the women all know about they know about the sex thing. And I had, a bunch of women. Oh my God, I got so into that book for a while. But should we tell the men? Because they thought some of the men are figuring it out. Like one of the men had red hair and he had sex with Susie, and Susie later had a red-haired child. They were starting to catch on. So the women are having this discussion. Should we even tell men about the concept of time?
Yeah.
And they did. And it was used against them.
And here we go. Yep. And then they started taking over our knowledge, basically using our knowledge in a masculine way is the problem.
Vilifying it. And the thing that really pissed me off with feminism is that feminists, when they said there's no difference, feminists vilified the feminine qualities also. Because they were trying to say, we're more than just,
Because part of the feminist movement, do you feel like, was women just becoming more masculine to show that they could do the same things, right?
They had no other option when they said there was no difference between men and women. How could you argue rationally for an alternative position if your position is there's no difference?
Right. Yeah. And instead, what this book is about is there is a difference, a very important difference. And if we could embrace that and get back to our feminine side, I mean, the whole world would change. And that's what you talk about when you talk about mentoring men. It's like us needing to come back to our feminine side and mentor, not change everything they're doing, not tell them they're doing anything wrong, but mentor them into balancing out their masculine and feminine also. Would that be correct?
Their thinking and feeling. Because females have larger corpus callosums, which is in the back of the brain that connects the right brain to the left brain, which is thinking and feeling. Theirs is 50 times larger than male. So men, if you say, well, how do you feel about that? They get real nervous. What are you talking about? I know what I think. How do I feel? Because men were hurt equally by being kept apart. Right? Don't be like a female. And don't get emotional or know how you feel. Don't talk about your feelings, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So what you're saying is they aren't as connected to their right brain, the right left brain. When people talk about right left brain and their masculine and feminine side, they became disconnected from that also. So what we're trying to do is mentor them into getting more back into their feelings, to connecting those more, so that as we're making decisions and moving forward as a collective, we're making better decisions. What are some other things, just facts that men and women are different?
First of all, if we had a more balanced epistemology, that word just means, how do I know what I know? Epistemology. How do you know what you know? You have to look back and question, because there was a lot of errors in terms of what are women. People still don't know. But I thought that, to me, the first thing, how it matters is because men and women are different, and women have more connection to empathy, passion, morality, that kind of thing. I don't think females would start wars. And I don't think there would be a 73% allotment toward defense if women were in charge. It would go towards social work and social sciences.
Because you had in your book, too, you talked about different studies that have gone on that show that Men make decisions based more on what's best for them individually, right? It's that quick decision. And women tend to make decisions based on the collective, those around them. And you see that even in when you're mothering your children. We are born and biologically a little bit more, the studies have shown, more apt to make decisions based on all the facts, on feeling what's best for everyone, not just myself.
Yes.
That's more masculine, the what's good for me, what's good for me, what's good for me.
Then it would change what we support, how we spend our money in a government, even that stuff.
And the problem is, because I know you're thinking, well, we're starting to have more women in politics and that, but are those women that are going into politics embracing their feminine side, or are they still fully embracing the masculine side? Are they just a woman using their masculinity?
Most of them are playing a male game.
So, yeah, we could use more feminine influence pretty much everywhere. Just a couple more things that show we really, truly are different. For the record, when men back in the day used to blame women when they didn't have their son. Do you know?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But it was like, she didn't give me a son. Dude, that was you. Am I right? Because now we know that we only have an XX. They have the Y on their side in their sperm that's needed to make a male. So we got blamed for that this whole time too. It really wasn't our bodies. It wasn't us deciding if it was going to be male or female. It was the sperm. All right. So I love that that's come to light. But also you talking here about the female egg is the largest cell in the body. Furthermore, mature eggs are different from every other cell in the body, engaging in incorporative and nurturing behavior. Just so you guys know, the baby cells stay in the mother's body and brain, which may create the shift that happens during motherhood. The mother's cells also remain in the baby's body. And this is a fun fact because the ovum actively takes sperm inside and supports the replication of genetic material. Furthermore, eggs can repair sperm that are defective, including those with chemically induced mutations in the genetic code. In other words, women appear to be programmed, even at the cellular level, to fix the wounds of men. So our bodies are pretty darn amazing. And that's a big difference, girls. Like, also, what's the oxytocin connection? You talked about that somewhere in the book too, did you not?
Yeah, the caring connection, the care associated with morality and empathy. And
yes, oxytocin is mainly found in females. Males apparently only experience the benefits of oxytocin during sex. They also have short-lived jump in oxytocin when interacting with females. They also have 10 times more testosterone, 10 to 20 times more testosterone to females, and it's actually a great inhibitor of oxytocin. All right. And just as a reminder, oxytocin is responsible for feelings of trust, connection, empathy. Empathy is necessary for morality. Okay. And so we have more oxytocin, which creates more empathy. And again, is even more evidence that women are more of the moral sex, right? And that goes to that decision making also, because we are flooded with oxytocin all the time, which makes sense as I'm thinking about it. If they get flooded with oxytocin after sexual intercourse, I feel like I've talked to a lot of people who use that little time zone, right? If I need to tell my husband something kind of rough or ask him for something or do something, I know when the best time is. Well, this is scientifically why it is, because there's a flood of oxytocin. We have it all the time. They do not have it all the time. I'm just trying to put out there, and this book covers it really beautifully too, how it is factual that we are different. We are not equal. And I don't mean that in a bad way, right? Because I think that some of these equalities lean a little bit more to the feminine side, frankly. I don't know.
Yes. If I were honest, yes. I think females are superior. Yeah. That book is not about that, though. The book is equality of value. Start there and see where you go.
Right.
Females are the primary sex. Every living thing started out female. All human beings all started. Yeah. Largest cell in the body, XX, as opposed to fragile.
Every embryo starts out female. Every male right now that you're talking to started out female in their mama's tummy.
That's right.
So just saying. Okay. And again, this book is not trying to say that there is some kind of a supremacy or whatever, but hey, we got to get back in there, right? The feminine energy will help change things. And that's for men to embrace too, because they need to embrace their feminine energy because it's there, right? Yeah. I mean, that's what research has shown. I want to talk a little bit about the connection of how our brains work, how everything works, and embodied spirituality. Because you had this, chapter, I think 13 talks a little bit about this. Synopsis of it even says, the spirituality of women has always been more authentic and embodied. Women typically live their spirituality and do not see it as separate from who they are. Women are connected and relational. Her spirituality and sexuality, until now, have been defined and controlled by males. The evolution of consciousness is still being limited by a position that mainly reflects the left brain perspective. So I want to talk a little bit about this because you also have in your book, for many women, sex and spirituality are experienced as a reunion of soul and body. Many women feel as they've learned to trust this unfolding process. They were at the same time learning to trust themselves internally. Women also learned how to wait and leaned further that waiting takes trust. And then you go on to say, although the women completed the journeys, they often left their old and familiar states of mind. Initially, they moved into a place of not knowing. Most felt that every woman reaches this threshold at least once in her life. Women are able to rediscover their connectiveness with the sacred, often after a descent into despair, rage, and helplessness. These feelings, they say, help the next layer of buried feelings emerge. They then learn to let go of these feelings and enter into new possibilities. In order to do this, they had to learn not to be too harsh on themselves and to trust the process, which seems to allow the unfolding to occur. Many sensed that there was nothing they could trust, no outer authority except the process itself. Trusting this process, when they had nothing to trust except their inner instinct of truth, led many women to a heightened sense of spiritual and intuitive discernment. This felt very close to what many of us are feeling in this, what I talk about as this midlife spiritual awakening, right? We're awakening and we're having to trust our intuition, our instinct. That's why this process is probably a bit more intuitively easy for women, would you say?
I would say it's easier, but it's hard to find the information or the studies that validate what you're thinking. Because so little research, the research either has been skewed or not done. So you just have to really trust your own inner knowing. You do.
Yes, that's what this whole journey is about. And you go on to talk about how nature often became a spiritual guide for women because they feel healed when they're among trees and water. And we talk a lot about on the show about getting back to nature, right? Getting back out there, like one with source, God, whatever you're going with out there. And nature plays a big part of this. Do you agree? Absolutely. Is that what the research shown too?
There's now a heightened focus on the spiritual wisdom that exists in nature.
You have in here, women often realize through direct experience that they are made out of the same stuff of the earth. Their nature enables them to reclaim part of themselves that have been lost or disowned. Perhaps most importantly, women realize that spirituality and religion are not the same. The confusion comes when we don't make the distinction between religion and spirituality, because religion is an organized system of beliefs that are too often male-oriented. Spirituality, on the other hand, is an innate quality present in every human being. It does not belong to any one religion, or does it belong to any one gender. So that's a key thing. I really connected with that when I read it too, because I've gone through a whole religious deconstruction process myself. And so when I read that, I'm like, that does make so much sense. The difference between religion and spirituality clicks. That's a big, big part of the journey. I feel like from talking with a lot of women who've gone through this or going through it, that is a big part of this. Do you think? I mean, I hate to bring it back to the religion again, but it really has.
What do you mean click? What do you mean when it clicks?
No, when you finally, okay, so if you were brought up in a religious background, strict whatever, when you finally realize the difference, I guess is what I'm saying, when it clicks, the difference between religion and spirituality.
Yes.
Right? And you start to really embody the spiritual part of it.
Yes.
I think that's when change really starts to occur.
Yeah, and you don't need an intermediary like a priest or a minister to tell you what to believe, because what you believe is inside. You just have to get in touch with that.
It's already in there. And that's why we talk about a lot of this, doing the work and figuring out what feels right to me and what feels wrong to me, so that we can move forward authentically as ourselves and embracing our feminine side, right? Not just spirituality, but being okay with the feminine side, and I had to do a lot of this too, because I felt like I was stuck in my masculine for a long time because I was go, go, go. I was raising kids, doing all those things, but I also needed to get my degree. I needed to work. I needed to get my business going. All these like go, go, go. And then through this journey, it's been brought to my attention that no, I should not be in my masculine lane so strong. I don't want to ditch my masculine side completely, but I do want to take back over and take back control of the feminine side, right? And use those masculine attributes to my advantage, yes, at times, but really stay in my feminine and also let that ripple out to the people around me, male and female alike, right? So this is all part of this journey, you guys. That's why I love this book. It's factual based. It's very educational, the entire book, along with your experiences. But that's why I think it pairs well with women in these spiritual journeys, because part of reclaiming who we are, our authenticity, our feminine side, I think is a critical part of this whole thing. That's what I'm feeling anyway.
Can't define women without defining morality, spirituality, empathy, compassion, oxytocin, all those things.
All of it. Yeah. And once you start to learn that about yourselves and you start to learn historically, go back and do the research. How did this happen?
How do you know what you know? Right. How do you know what is because how do we know what we know?
Here's another part of this that I really liked, because you're very honest during your book about how your relationship with your own husband evolved during this whole process, right? Because you had a wake up moment. We talked about it a little bit in the last episode, but you had that moment where you were in the kitchen and the mixer was talking to you. And you had this awakening, really. You had this awakening, and you joked about, like, you kind of wanted a mini lobotomy because you wanted to forget what you just realized.
I didn't want to know. I didn't want to. I had a nice, perfect life with 3 perfect children, and I didn't want to go there. I didn't want to question it and think, okay, he's in the study reading about the meaning of life, but what am I doing in here with the kitchen with the 3 children? Isn't this the meaning of life? Isn't this? It's like the little snake that crawls into the garden of your mind. I didn't want it. No, it's hard. When you're first starting, it's hard to trust your own self and what you're being given. And I would put that, I think you probably talk about this, Jen, it's part of the call. You're at home before you wake up. And then you hear the call, and the call just says there can be more to life than what I'm living. And if you open up to that, God knows what you're going to come up with.
You went through a period where your husband was trying to figure out, like, what do you want? Right? Like, what do you want from me, lady? Yeah. And so, and you ended up doing just what this book says. You mentored him through it, and he ends up giving a whole speech.
One was Why Men Are Clueless in Relationships, and the other one was called Confessions of a Male Chauvinist Pig. Because he understood what I was saying. He finally got what I was saying.
So, and he says, so I went off to see Lynn, and we sat on her porch and we began to talk about a lot of things. Mainly, we focused on what my wife wanted from me and my life. And she said she just wants you. She doesn't want your money, your reputation, your prestige, your position. She just wants you, and she wants you to be you. He goes on to one of the speeches. He starts with, good afternoon, women and men of this audience. My name is David T., and I'm a male chauvinistic pig. With that admission, he was relating to Alcoholics Anonymous, where you stand up and you say, like, hi, my name's John, I'm an alcoholic, whatever. So he was kind of playing off of that in it. But that's how he started his speech, and he went on to outline this all in his speech for everyone. So this is in the book. You guys need to get the book and read his whole speech, okay? But she did mentor her husband, but I want to talk more about this relationship thing. I love this. And it happens to fall on page 111, which I don't know how much you know about angel numbers, but a 111 is kind of a big deal. And this falls on page 111 in your book.
I never thought of that. Did not think of that.
No. So, and I was like, oh, yeah, this is a good page for this. You have in here, it starts out with the biggest struggle for women has been how to completely open in a relationship with others and still be able to meet their own needs. The female solution has never been to seal themselves off and take a me first attitude, nor has it been to betray their own deep source of wisdom now that they're discovering it. You go on to say, for many women, this whole process of trying to relate to someone who has little or no idea of what's going on has been too difficult. So many women have left relationships because they felt like they could not really be themselves. Then you say women no longer automatically need or want to defer to men. Similarly, women are no longer willing to change their personalities to accommodate their husbands or lovers. It appears now that women's willingness to do these things was often the glue that held relationships together. When she is no longer willing, the relationship breaks down. Divorce rates for the baby boomers are skyrocketing and are higher than any other group because these were the women most at risk. Many of them were raised in the 50s and 60s and believed that what they were taught as they grew up. With the women's movement, these women were also the ones who woke up in midlife. And I was like, hell yeah, this feels like it's still going on to this day because
it is.
Many of these women decided to leave. Everyone's like, oh, the statistics are all over the place about divorce rates. But a lot of this boomed because women were finally allowed to make that choice. Okay? Because there was a time, you guys, back when women could not get a loan without a male signing for them. You couldn't do anything. You couldn't have a no-fault divorce. A woman could not divorce unless she showed she was being abused or infidelities or whatever. And so that it finally opened up where women could make that choice of independence and to get out of that on their own.
And they had money. They had jobs. They got educated and got jobs.
So this is the boom that started to happen. And I think you go on to say even like, no matter what age, women are thriving and they are falling in love with themselves and are quite sure that they are never going to return to the old ways, basically. So I think that's where we're at right now. Because a lot of women, if you ask most men, you ask most couples, the men will say, I only got divorced because my wife wanted one. It's women initiating this because they don't want to go with the status quo anymore, right? They don't want to just do that, and they're finding themselves much happier. And this is, again, not man bashing, but just saying this is happening. These are facts all around us. Women are waking up to this, that there are more possibilities. And it often happens in midlife because we have completed the nurturing of our children. Not completed, we're going to always nurture them, but it feels like the birds have left the nest, right? And we feel like all of these things like, wait a minute, I'm not just here to take care of my children's father still. You know what I mean? Like there's more out there. There's more I can do. And that's part of the spiritual awakening too. So what are your thoughts? Right. Do you have any thoughts on all that business?
Well, I would just add, going back way prehistory, women, the archetypes were like maiden, mother, crone. It's before we start our periods, become sexual, have sex, get
pregnant,
mother. So you have the baby, and then you become the wise grandmother. That was kind of like the little 3 steps, right? But now they're suggesting, wait, after you've raised your kids, it doesn't just automatically, because I'm 81, you get old enough to be wise and then talk to your daughters-in-law or your daughters or whatever. But there's a whole period of probably at least 40 years where women are just doing amazing things. That it's not just you're sitting quietly. The maiden, mother, crone thing is actually blood rituals. Maiden before you start your period, and then mother while you're in your fertile period. And then it's the idea that blood is energy or information to you. And instead of expelling it as women do it when they're nurturing and raising the children, the blood, the essence of your creativity is leaving, then it stays within because you go into menopause. So, it's kind of, it's like deeper than that.
Articles that talk about the fact that our bodies are made this way to protect us when they're done.
But there's a period, there's a new archetypally to females, which is, okay, you did that. You were a maiden, you were the mother, and you're still a mother. And you may or may not be a crone. There ought to be a next step there, step 3, which is you're just doing what you love, owning your life.
Yeah, because women we're living much longer now. If you go back 2,000 years, we weren't living into our 80s. You know what I mean? Like that didn't happen. But now we have this whole new opportunity to have this whole new phase of life. And I think it's pretty necessary in our world right now, right? As a collective, I think it's kind of our job to pass that wisdom down now. And do the work on ourselves so we can pass it on to others. No, I love that. Anyway, you go on to say, because we were talking about this whole relationship thing, and you have chapter 8, the real reason relationships fail. And you basically have the imbalance is still very much alive, particularly in relationships where real men and women come together and try to relate to each other. So in that, are you saying that part of the real reason relationships fail is because that feminine and masculine energy is not in balance? Or what are you saying?
Yeah, I think you could say that. It's because men, they have skewed the research on things. And I can talk about that a little bit in a minute to go back to that. But women have been told they're not as rational as men. They're not as moral. Even women are supposedly less creative. Creative being who is, we talked about this already today. Yeah. The woman gives birth. The woman brings forth new life. And yet, in certain contexts, it's the man, he planted the seed, and that's the only thing in it. We're just incubators, right? That kind of thing.
Right.
So women don't have often enough self-esteem to know, excuse me, this is a moral decision, and this is why I'm saying that, they don't value themselves because they've been told, oh, you can't have a woman president, she'll have her period and press the button for the pump. This is dumb, so dumb. No. But a lot of that is research that is discounting. None of that is. Women are the more moral sex. Mm-hmm. Women are the more rational sex, the more creative sex, the healthier sex, actually.
Yeah, because I remember you had this in your book, that it's statistically more likely that a man hyped up with 20 times more testosterone with women are going to hit that war button, that red button, before a woman who's going to stop before she hits that button and think about everyone involved, right? It's not an ego-driven thing. We're going to intuitively, what's best, right? For everyone, not just my country, but the other country.
Everyone. Right.
Everyone. And so that's a big difference there, which is why we need women to go into politics that are embracing their feminine more. Not just women, in their masculine, trying to be equal.
But to go back to, I think that's why. So you get married, and she thinks he's the wise one who's more rational and and all that. And he thinks she should stay in her own role.
Yeah.
So
girl.
And that's been a big part of historical research is women used to be institutionalized. Why? Because they could not stay in their own God-prescribed role of staying home, being sweet and tender, and taking care of the children and shutting up. So they used to drug them and institutionalize them because she couldn't accept her own role, God-given roles.
Yes. No.
So you have these uneven expectations even when we're going in.
Yeah. My husband's grandmother was institutionalized just like that. Yep. I spoke with my mother-in-law before she passed, and she told me a little bit about her mom. And her mom was institutionalized back in the day, right? And probably shouldn't have been. So anyway, this isn't as far back in our history as you think, you guys. No, because there are people like right now who have parents who have this done, and maybe even themselves. Who knows? Let's talk more about what we do about this, because what should we be doing, in your opinion, to help change things in future generations? Is it, you talk a little bit about the way we raise our sons. Is it about, what do you think we need to be doing?
I think women need to have better information about who they are on the most basic levels, because so much of it has been wrong, clearly wrong, because it came from a male perspective. I'll just give you a little example. When I was getting my first master's degree, I was interested in morality, and it was Lawrence Kohlberg who was the expert in morality. So I literally wrote a master's thesis paper on him. And as God is my witness, he said in there, and I quoted him and didn't even question it then, that was probably in the late 70s, women never get to the higher levels of morality. And then if you go a little deeper, you find out, did he ever even study one woman in his research? No, not one woman. And also, it was the way he defined morality, because according to Kohlberg, the highest levels of morality is you go beyond yourself into, for God or country, an abstract concept. Whereas women's morality is more face-to-face, one-on-one, that kind of thing. It wasn't until Carol Gilligan, she wrote a book called In a Different Voice, and it was on how males and female morality differed. And here's another little part of it that was true. She got her degree at Harvard, I think, all-male doctoral committee, and she was saying that women are moral in a different way. And because they make their moral decisions based on what they feel is intuitively, intuitively right. Mm-hmm. And the male committee said, intuition? What? You made a decision because it felt right? What's felt right? You couldn't research that. And they would not accept her dissertation until she changed it. She had to say, okay, in a different voice, females have their own morality. This was in the 70s. That's how long, so we still have this old stuff hanging around that says women never get to the higher levels of morality. Well, you wouldn't even want to. It's a whole different way of conceiving morality. Women's is more one-on-one, heart-based.
That more, because you have this little section, women's greatest learning is often unlearning. So is that the
Unlearn that. Yeah.
Unlearn
that was wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, because you put it here, there's so much misinformation around the concept of the feminine that one of the first things women should do is to unlearn most of what they learned about themselves and their roles. Right. Only then will they be
male-based.
Yes, because that's the only way we can begin to access and trust our deep intuitive knowing of what they think is correct.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So we got to get back, and part of that's probably the getting back to nature, all kinds of things. I mean, it's really this kind of this spiritual awakening we're talking about. And then you have also in here, although true equality may still be many years away, women would be wrong to wait. Start now to trust that you are part of this feminine essence. The feminine, however, is more than a powerful primordial force in the universe. It's connectivity, relationality, wholeness, intuition, and all the things that have been relegated to other for thousands of years. The feminine wisdom has been waiting for us. And like any other primordial essence that has been ignored, it is now, just as predicted, entering quietly through the back door. Okay. So, and this was in 2012. That back door's probably opened even more now that we're in 2026.
The Me Too movement has happened, and then all the stuff that's happening politically right now, with all that.
Yep. You talk a lot about, too, the hero or the heroine's journey, right? Like you have a little bit of that in the book. Tell us about that.
It really started because men went out the door, literally out the door. They left their farm and they went to Europe to fight in the war, or they, whereas women stayed home. But when you look carefully at the heroine's journey, women can do the 4 stages: home before you wake up, then hearing the call, you can do that, and then often go through the ordeal, which could just all be in your mind, like, oh my God, if I leave him, I'm not going to have any money. The kids won't have a father, all the home call, ordeal, home. And then you get back, you integrate it with what is right for you. So the heroine's journey, women can do that without ever actually leaving. But sometimes you don't have to leave. With me and my husband, I stayed and we talked and talked and talked until he understood it. My college professor.
Did. And you talked about that took a couple years? Just for everyone listening out there.
It took about 2 years. It took about 2 years for him to be like, God, Shelley, what are you saying to me?
Because all you were asking from him was you wanted him to open up and really do more also. Do more with the children, be more present in his own life within the family, right? And start getting to realize, don't you feel more fulfilled by spending more time?
Isn't this the meaning of life? Yeah.
Yes. Instead of what's in your books in your library and watching sports on TV and like whatever it consumed his day, as you started pulling him and mentoring him into being more a part of your life, your children's life, having deeper conversations with you, not just with the other professors or that you really, it sounded like in the book, your relationship really started to grow and evolve. Does that sound right?
Yes.
Okay. And so just to get this started, if anyone's thinking, I need that with my husband, how does she do that? Is it first embracing your own?
Yes. You have to trust yourself. And I can add on just a little bit to what you were saying, because something would come in my mind that I used to want a little lobotomy for. And I'd be like, oh God, I didn't think that yesterday. Like I wanted something yesterday and today. Now that we've talked about it and then a new thing came in my mind and I did not want it. I didn't want it. And Frank, for those 2 years, because it had come in my mind, I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to have to tell him because now I know that. And so at one point he said, geez, Shelley, do you just tell me every single thing that's in your mind? And after I had done it long enough, I realized I was being very discerning. I didn't say everything. Some of it would be like, we were at step 3, and now I'm going to tell you about step 4. But stage 8, that it took a while, and I was already at stage 8. So he's like, "Do you just say everything? Can't you censor anything? You just say everything that's in your mind?" And I said, "Frank, you don't know the stuff that I don't say to you." And I will tell you, Jen, he got a look of fear on his face of knowing that I was censoring what I was doing, that I never saw it before or after. He's like, okay. I mean, he knew then, she's being discerning. She's not just dumping on me.
Yeah.
I did it very carefully, very kindly. And for him to say, I just said, I didn't do that. I was very careful how I did it.
Yeah. So,
okay. Did I answer that question?
You did. And this is a side question, but so in the book, sometimes you're referred to as Sherry. Is that on purpose?
I don't know why. It was very much our story. Through it all, I protected Frank. I wanted to protect Frank.
It's not Frank in the book.
He's Dave. We're Sherry and Dave. But it's Shelley and Frank.
I know. I was like, is this a typo? Because I know her name is Shelley, and I remember her saying the word Frank.
I know. A lot of people are like, why did you... Mostly, I was protecting Frank. Even when Frank was giving those talks, and most people didn't understand what he was talking about, I was protective of him. Like, Frank, you don't have to say all this stuff. He went more into it. I mean, like, he didn't just get it. He got it with a capital G.
He went
really got
hard. He went big.
He did.
He was already a big thinker, but I think the combination of him starting to expand his big thinking into what you were saying was quite a shift for him.
It became it was like his thing,
Yes, because this is how she ends the book. And this kind of goes with what we were just talking about a little bit, because she says there are words on her husband's T-shirt, on a shirt that says, I only do what the voices in my wife's head tell her to tell me to do. You say, and I think...
He still has that shirt.
I love it. And you say, and I think what a wonderful balanced world it would be if men really only did what the voices in their female partners' heads told them to do. It would be balanced. They wouldn't do it wrong.
Women wouldn't do it wrong, I don't think.
It would be balanced because women wouldn't tell men everything that's in their heads, only the things that men needed to know. And that's where you're saying the balance comes in. We're not going to tell them every little thing in our brains, right? But our intuition will tell us what they need to know and what they need to kind of do.
Right.
Yes. So
and you start with the easy ones first and maybe be happy enough. You got stage 3, 4, and 5. Like, he did that. I didn't think he'd go there.
Yes. You're setting yourself up for failure if you think you're going to go into this journey with your own partner and that things are just going to change overnight and that they're going to end up doing speeches like Shelley's husband. No, that's not the goal, right?
Right.
Everyone's got their own level.
That's why I didn't use our real name. It's not. This is not according to Shelley and Frank. It's
no.
It's being wise about how you know what you know, and being open. So she has to trust herself, and he has to trust her.
Yes, right. And that isn't saying that we don't still listen to the masculine counterpart. Because for myself, even with my own husband, there are times when that left brain thinking is very beneficial. And I need that to balance me, right? So I don't ever want to get rid of that, even about my own husband. I love that about him and the way his brain works. But I do also like to work on him understanding more the feminine side, right? That just because my decision got made with my gut intuition, that doesn't mean that mine is less right than his left brain technical process he went through to get to the answer, right? I think if we can combine that, I mean, come on. We could make some big changes in this world. Am I right, Shelley?
Yes.
Yes. No, I love it. All right, you guys listen. I could talk all day about this because I showed Shelley, I got a lot of tabs in the old book, and I loved it because I love things that open my mind to new ideas or make me think of things in a way that I hadn't before. And that really feels like what this book is. Shelley's been saying, I've been saying you need to relaunch this book. It's now time. Put a couple modifications in, like add some new things that have happened between 2012 and 2026 here, right? But that wouldn't take much. Your little brain could do that quickly. Yeah. And relaunch it back into the world again, because I think we're more ready for it now. The feminine energy's returning.
If not now, when? I mean,
what are we waiting for? What are we waiting? Things are shifting so much right now in our world. I mean, I can feel it spiritually. You can just feel the earth's vibration, spiritual, everything feels like it's changing, like we're waking up, especially women, at a faster rate. And so if not now, then when? Yeah, it's time to make some changes. That's what I'm feeling out there. I think we're all feeling that we need changes. And this might be one direction we could go, right? To make some changes to better everyone's lives, both male and female, right? Every gender can benefit from this, I guess is what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. So, do you have any parting final words of wisdom for us, Shelley? So much wisdom. I know. I love speaking with generations that are above my own, because I'm in my 50s, like probably your kids, some of your kids, right? I feel like, So I love getting knowledge from the generation ahead because you've been through what we're going through now, right? It's not that different. I mean, we like to act like, generationally, we're so different. We're not. Like, the struggles are really very much the same for every generation of women. So I love getting fresh wisdom from someone who's already walked the path. So what do you got? Do you have any other any final, something that's coming up for you?
If women would just go deep with, how do I know what I know? Do I just know that and believe it because that's what somebody taught me when I was a child? You don't have to stay there. Life has changed. Life is growth. That's why Mari goes very well with CQ.
It does. It's one of those tools on this path. So, basically what I'm hearing you saying is we've got to figure out what we know, what we believe, what our path looks like authentically, right? And that's different for each one of us. Our paths will not all look the same, of course. But what looks authentic for us, and just keep moving forward. I feel like just the vibration that will raise just from doing that, even if none of the men listen to our mentoring, if we just do that, things will change, right?
Absolutely.
We're hoping they get on board with some of the feminine qualities, but even if we just get back on board with it, the way we used to be thousands of years ago, I mean, the ripple effect. I'm getting the chills thinking about it. Come on, Shelley, get this book back out there.
Okay, I will.
And you guys don't wait for her to get it back out because you should get it now. All the links are in the show notes where you can go to Shelley's website so that you can get your hands on it yourself. You're going to get thought-provoking moments during the book. You're going to know that a lot of this is based on research and science. It's not just, like you said, it's not just what Shelley thinks. No, there's so much in this book. So
Thank you
guys. If you haven't caught on, I'm saying buy the book. But and get to Lilydale so that you can get your Mari test too.
Thank you.
Right? All right.
I'll see you all at Lilydale. We'll do Mari and we'll talk.
We'll do Mari and talk. Buy your book before you go so that you can get it signed when you sit down for your Mari. That's my 2 cents on the whole thing. All right. Well, thank you so much, Shelley. This has been another amazing conversation.
Thank you very much, Jen.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Jen. Thank you.
Listen, I know your time is valuable. And right now, I'm feeling super grateful and totally humbled that you chose to hang out with me today. If this podcast resonates with you, could you do me a solid and hit that subscribe or follow button? That's going to help you out because you're never going to miss an episode. And it helps me out because you're never going to miss an episode. And if you have 30 seconds more, could you leave a 5-star rating and maybe leave a kick-ass review? Thank you so much, and I can't wait to continue our journey on the next episode. Oh, and I can't forget the fine print. The legal jargon. This podcast is presented solely for educational and entertainment purposes. We're just 2 friends on this journey together, and this podcast is not intended as a substitute for the advice of a physician, professional coach, psychotherapist, or any other qualified professional. You get it. See you next time.